Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another outstanding Asian American Chamber of Commerce Friday webinar on GovCon topics, where we invite industry experts to educate members and potential members, hint, hint, if you're not a member, please join, on industry tips and best practices. Our guest today is Janetta Honda. She's the Chief of Staff for the Manufacturing, A&D, Automotive, and Life Sciences at Capgemini North America. And before I tell you all about our guest speaker, our topic today, maximizing project profits, I am super excited to learn all about this because we normally have webinars on how to win government contracts, how to find the right leads, but there are very few webinars that talk about what can you do to improve your profits after you have already won the contract. So I'm excited to hear from Janetta today on all these good techniques that you can use. A quick introduction about myself. My name is Reena Bhatia. I'm your moderator, and my contact information is provided here. I am the CEO of Proposal Helper and Bid Execs. I'm also a board member of the Asian American Chamber. So again, I will be moderating the panel today. If you have questions, please submit them in the question and answer panel. About Asian American Chamber of Commerce, it serves the DC metro area, and really it has been a tremendous asset in our community to facilitate growth and development of member businesses through networking, matchmaking, and promoting the businesses that are members of the Chamber. If you'd like to sponsor any of the Chamber events or become a member, please reach out to the Asian American Chamber of Commerce. Quick introduction of our guest today, Janetta Honda. I gave you her very long title. She's a Chief of Staff at Capgemini. She brings 20 years of experience in government and commercial consulting. She's currently with Capgemini. She's been there since January 2019. Prior to that, she spent 17 years with Booz Allen Hamilton, where she was a civil market business operations team, and she managed a large-scale portfolio of contracts as a project controller and in other capacities. The experience that she's gained from there is what she'll be sharing with us today. Quick disclaimer, this is not legal advice. There are no legal opinions here. We are providing you the information here for informational purposes only. And as again, this webinar is being recorded. With that, I'm going to hand over the microphone to Janetta. Janetta, welcome, and all yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Reena, for the warm introduction, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us on this rainy Friday morning. First and foremost, I hope everybody's doing well, staying safe and healthy during these crazy times that we're living through today. Hopefully this is something we'll get to tell our grandkids about. So as Reena mentioned, I wanted to spend a little bit of time today to talk to you about how to best maximize profits on your project from a project controller perspective. We'll talk a little bit about the benefits of project control, and then, why are we talking about job profit, right, and why now? We'll spend a bit of time on profit life cycle, which I know you're all very familiar with. And then we'll talk a little bit about risk mitigation as far as your job profit is concerned. So what are the benefits of project control? So for those who are not familiar with the function, project controller is someone who manages your project financials. So think of it as the center hub on a wheel, and their main job outside of financial management is to serve as the liaison between all the various support and shared functions. So think of your contract administrator, your subcontract administrator, your vendors, if you have any, your clients. They're really the main point of contact outside of the program manager, who can gather the data that you need to have to be able to manage a project successfully. I started reflecting on this as I was preparing for this meeting, and in my experience, project control, that the function has really been severely underutilized. this is how large consulting firms do business. But when we start thinking about some of the smaller, small business owners and smaller firms, it is quite often overlooked or unheard of to have project control as part of your day-to-day functions. And I think, when people think of it, outside of maybe not being familiar with it, I think there's obviously an added cost of having an extra person on a project. The one thing I wanted to share with you is that this is a billable function. And what that obviously means is that you're able to include them in your proposals as a billable function that the client, our government clients, quite often pay for. And that's 9 times out of 10 on proposals. The one time you're not able to do that, you should, as a best practice, think about adding that cost to your unallowables or unallowable analysis when you're working through your profit analysis as part of your proposal. And that's really how you address the cost from a project control perspective. And then the last thing I say on this is the biggest differentiator. There's a lot of operations people, right? There are a dime a dozen, and you can bring an ops person that can kind of help you through the operations. But what differentiates the project control function is really the consulting aspect. If you find the right person with the right skill set, who's also a consultant at heart, they're not only, they won't only just help you with the financial management aspect of it, but it is someone that you can bring to your client meetings. It is someone who's able to understand the nuances, the FAR and DCA compliance nuances, the risk mitigation piece of it, and really help from a client discussion perspective as well. So, I put this kind of ribbon on the bottom of this slide and saying it's how you build the right muscle to get to the playoffs, right? So using a sports analogy, if you have the right talent, you're able to achieve those targets that you set forth at the beginning of the contract. So why job profit and why now? I mean, again, I don't think I have to tell anybody how much more competitive the market is these days, right? And then with today's COVID-19 impact, it is even more important than ever to focus on profit margins. As an industry, we're facing more competitive environment to win work. We're facing more competition when it comes to acquiring the right talent pool. And then the margins are smaller. And so while everyone can and should contribute to job profit objectives, it is really important to have the right people on board early to be able to achieve those objectives. So I won't spend a lot of time on this slide only because I know everybody's very familiar with a project life cycle, but I wanted to bring your attention to two boxes, the project kickoff and the project execution. I can't tell you how many times in my experience I've seen projects not do as well as they should have because there was no project kickoff to begin with. And I'm not talking about a project kickoff with the client. I'm talking about an internal project kickoff where you have your program manager, your project controller, and the other various internal functions that you can utilize to help support the program. I mean, this is really the time to work to set expectations, to encourage open communications, and to really kind of work out those nuances that you need to understand as a team to be able to deliver on the targets. And then from a project execution perspective, and we'll dive into that a little bit in the next few slides, there's things that you can do, sort of levers that you can pull to be able to stay on job profit and or maximize that job profit. So I think the key here is, thinking through profit decisions early and throughout the contract life cycle. So outside of the proposal development and negotiations and award, as I mentioned, project kickoff is so important. Understanding the terms and conditions of the awarded contract and having a comprehensive kickoff meeting it makes a tremendous difference. really gaining understanding of how the contract was bid, and what we need to do to execute, and what the profit expectations and targets are. And having that discussion early so that everybody is on board and understands what they're working towards is really, really important. The one best practice that I'd like to share with you here is if you have a project controller onboarded and already attending these project kickoffs, have them come to the meeting prepared with a budget, with an initial budget for your project. They can pull that initial information from the proposal, post-award, obviously. But that is so important to have a tool that everybody can review and understand, that sets your foundation to be able to meet your objectives. Project execution, as I mentioned, is obviously throughout project execution, you have to think of various different ways and best practices to meet those profit objectives. And one is to monitor and focus on direct reductions to profit. So think of your unallowables, your unbillables, your travel, your local travel, things that you ideally should think about and add to your proposal and profit analysis. Those are huge pitfalls for people that I've seen sort of, for those who have had overruns on their jobs or have had losses. Those were really the main areas that people just did not look at or didn't look at often. So making sure that you review that cost and that data and account for it correctly is really, really important. And again, that's something that falls under the project control function, and that's something they should be able to monitor for you. As I already mentioned, a budget and a budget tool is so crucial. It is something that you should be utilizing and monitoring regularly. It will help you avoid cost overruns. It will help you with scope creep. And really helps you when it comes to communicating any issues or situations with your clients and subs. Staying abreast of contract requirements, if you have a mod, making sure that not only the PM, but the project controller understands what those contract requirements and that mod is again, crucial to the success of meeting your project profit objectives. And lastly, managing delivery against proposal plan and your contract requirements. From an LCAT perspective, it's quite often one area that's missed, and that's the people forget that they have the ability to upslot and green staff in labor categories as appropriate. So just like we escalate our rates once a year, just like we give raises to our teams once a year, we're also able to upskill our staff in labor categories. So I would make it a best practice to yearly review your employees and their mappings to LCATs, and then determine if their skill sets and qualifications have changed. Did someone obtain a master's degree? Did someone move from 14 years to 15 years of experience, and therefore their LCAT can now be changed? Those are all things that people quite often don't think about and do, and it is quite frankly money that we're leaving on the table. Monitoring use of subs, if you have any, or if you are a vendor, making sure that your objectives and markup are calculated accurately and then reviewed accurately to ensure that you're staying on target is also really, really important. And then the last thing is ensuring option year rate escalation is accurately applied to every option year on your contract. From a risk mitigation perspective, there's a couple of things that are tried and true, I should say. Budget reviews. So meeting regularly with your PM and project controller to review your budgets. The best practice is at the very least meet monthly. Quite often, if it's a large job or if there's a lot of moving parts, you should do it by bi-weekly. But as part of that review, perform regular cost to complete estimates to determine risk. Where are we on overruns or underruns? What's coming in that we have not thought about? Be aware of when incremental funding runs out and provide timely funding requests. Again, as you all know, quite often as a small business, it is so important to communicate incremental funding run often because otherwise we're working at risk. And so making sure that that analysis is done accurately and communicated timely makes a huge difference. As I already mentioned, reconcile your financials and review them every month, but also look at the financial system versus your budget. Are you seeing any differences that are not accounted for in the budget that you should be thinking about? And then lastly, ensuring timely and accurate timesheet and expense report entries. A lot of times, and again, I'm looking at it from a large consulting firm standpoint, with vendors, it was quite often difficult to even bill the client timely because vendor invoices were lagging. So as a vendor, do your part in ensuring that you submit your invoices 15 to 20 days past the month at the latest, so that one, you're ensuring timely cash flow, but you're also allowing whomever you're working with, your partners, to be able to submit their invoices on time and meet their deliverables. And again, that just makes it for a better relationship, a working relationship. And the last thing on this is project management reviews. And so that's more all-encompassing in terms of, you bring every stakeholder that's working that project. So your PM, your project leads, obviously your project controller, and have a review. And those can happen monthly, those can happen quarterly, and really focus on financial health of the project. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Thank you, Janetta. We do have a question here, and I have a few questions prepared. This was very quick and dirty, obviously not detailed and in-depth. I know you and I have spoken at lengths about this function, and we can go on for hours. The question that has come in is if we are going to hire a new project controller, what would be the ideal LCAT, for those of you who don't know what LCAT is, labor category, for a project? Are they involved in day-to-day contract operations, or can they be responsible for multiple large-scale projects at once?
That's a great question. Yeah, so I've seen it happen both ways, right? I mean, there's often a financial type LCAT that we can slot project controllers into. But don't forget that your project controller can often manage up to 25 contracts, right? Because they only need, if it's a smaller contract, they only need, between 5 and 15 hours a month to help manage, because ultimately the responsibility falls on the project manager to ensure that they meet all of their objectives. A project controller is a person that helps achieve those goals. And so you can have one person manage, again, up to 20 or 25 contracts. Now, obviously, if you have a large scale contract, to answer the second part of that question, you absolutely can have them do different functions. But so there's a little bit of flexibility in that.
But generally speaking, project controllers do not get involved in the day-to-day operations of a contract. Is that correct?
Can you clarify, what do you mean by day-to-day operations?
They're not working with the client. They're not managing the people on the projects. They're also not doing those types of things in addition to doing just a controller job. Or is that possible?
It is possible. If you have a PMO set up, they'll skill set, not their skill set, but their swim lane will vary a little bit, and you can expand that. And again, it just depends on whether or not you have the right skill set to begin with from a project controller perspective. They wouldn't manage people they would manage it from a financial perspective. So ensuring that our people are, let's say, submitting their timesheets on time, right? And calling and saying, hey, I haven't seen your timesheet. So that responsibility then comes off of the project manager and allows them to focus on managing the client relationship and managing the project overall. So you can structure it a little bit, again, there's a lot of flexibility and you can structure it based on your needs.
Very nice. Yeah, and you know, I have to say that a lot of times when we write the small business proposals, we never talk about a project controller. Companies will talk about their PMO and they'll say, you know, we have an HR department watching timesheets, contracts department will do X, or financial manager will worry about budget reports. Well, that's way too many people involved versus having a project controller who then can coordinate those PMO resources.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why at the beginning of the call, I mentioned sort of this hub on a wheel, right? So if you picture that, and sort of the spokes that go into the various functions that you just mentioned, it is a primary function of the project controller to be able to coordinate that and make sure that it all happens. So, you know, another title for this could be a PMO role, right? If you're thinking about an LCAT, for instance.
Right. Okay, and I know that I promised you a 8:57 drop off, so I'm going to take a few more minutes of your time. Project control, what you mentioned at the beginning, it's everyone's function on the project. When a team has internal kickoffs, very few companies share the financial information with the entire team for right reasons. It's competitive information, it's inside company information. What do you suggest? How much information should the company share with all employees on the project so they're financially smart and aware of their actions?
So the targets and objectives are definitely something I would recommend thinking through and sharing with the employees. And then making sure that everybody is very much aware of the pitfalls. So again, think about, you know, local travel and unallowables, for instance, which is a huge downfall. You know, make sure that those are themes that people are aware of. I agree with you that most financials should not be shared with everybody on the project. And that's why I sort of listed out those key stakeholders. So, you know, your project controller who will hold those financials close to their vest is able to share some information, right, to be able to help people kind of navigate through things. But that's why it's really important for them to have a budget that's set up ahead of time. And again, the internal kickoff should really be a small group of people, right? It should be the stakeholders that will help with the day-to-day management from a contract, subcontract, and financial perspective. But again, I think the overarching targets and objectives should be something that's considered shared with the team.
Very good. Thank you for that. One other question is about, well, before I ask about scope creep, let me ask you this. Best practices. You worked with Booz Allen for a very long time. You worked with Capgemini. Small businesses say, oh, large businesses can get away by billing government for this. We can't. We're not going to be competitive. There is that little apprehension of billing one more LCAT. Tell us how the large companies do it. Do they actually put that in the proposal as unbillable, or you said it was also a billable position? How do they do that?
Yeah, so I've seen it done various ways. So at Booz Allen, project control function is not a mandatory function. Mandate is kind of a dirty word, you know, it's a 4-letter word at Booz Allen Hamilton. However, it is a strongly recommended function. It is, so there's various kind of mechanisms to add project control to projects. It is absolutely encouraged to bill it or to add it to a proposal as a billable function. And that is, again, 90% of the time, a proposal won't even be signed off on until and unless the managing partner sees a project control function built into the proposal. In the instances where that is not possible because the contract just doesn't allow for it, it is added as an unallowable expense and baked into the profit.
Right. So in your G&A or your overheads is where you might find
correct
baked in, but highly recommend companies to make room for that function. And as you mentioned, one person can manage up to 20 contracts.
Absolutely.
If you're a company large enough to have that many contracts, most certainly you can afford to have a project controller. In fact, you probably can, you won't be able to not afford to have a project controller. There were too many negatives in that sentence, but
yeah, absolutely. And it's an additional source of revenue, right? Because if you're able to build them or build them into a billable function, it is just another source of revenue for you.
Right. And, I'll close here. Thank you for the questions that have come in. I know, Janetta, you have to drop off. So we're going to end just a couple minutes early here, and I'm going to wrap it up with a big thank you to you for attending from the Asian American Chamber of Commerce, GovCon committee, and the entire chamber. Thank you for being our speaker today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
If you all have questions that pop up, my contact information is included in these slides in the recording. Feel free to contact me and I will get you in touch with Janetta or get you the answers if you want to deep dive into how can you maximize profits on your projects. Thank you all for joining today.
Thank you to the wonderful speaker for supporting the government contracting series. So the benefits for being an AACC member includes numerous networking events, high visibility in the Asian business community, and representation of minority and the woman-owned business community, reciprocal benefits with the member partners and the many other organizations, professional mentorship and volunteer opportunities, and up-to-date information on public policy, news, and events. There are sponsorship opportunities. Feel free to contact us at event@asian-americanchamber.org for membership and sponsorship information. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the contracting committee members for their dedication and support to make AACC Government Contracting webinar series possible.